Hello and a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha Television with me, Frank Pereira. Firstly, I'd like to wish all our viewers a very happy and prosperous New Year. Have a great 2017. Well, talking about 2017, it has started with a bang where in a majority verdict, the Supreme Court on Monday held that any appeal for votes on the ground of religion, race, caste, community or even language amounted to corrupt practice under the election law provision. A 7-judge bench of the Apex Court passed the judgment after hearing detailed arguments from various petitioners and respondents in Hindutva cases. In a 4:3 split vote, the Apex Court ruled in favor of keeping religion out of election pitches. In its order, the court said that elections are a secular exercise and thereby its way and process should be followed. The Supreme Court clarified that elections will be void if appeal for vote is made on religion by the candidates. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the landmark judgment of the Supreme Court. Joining me on the program today are Ashok Tandon, senior journalist, Vikas Singh, former Additional Solicitor General of India, Justice Rajinder Sachar, former Chief Justice of the Delhi High Court, and Desh Ratan Nigam, senior advocate. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining me on the program. Justice Sachar, I'd like to start with you, of course, and ask you about this landmark judgment, the split 4:3 verdict of the Supreme Court. What do you think of it?
It is certainly a very landmark judgment, but I'm only sorry that they haven't specifically overruled 1993 judgment of Burma Justice.
1995.
Because he had said, and actually it was so unfortunate, I wrote an article on this criticizing it, where he said that the Hindutva and Hinduism is a way of life. No, with all my respect to him, what is this? Islam means peace. Christianity means self-sacrifice. So, I mean, it was a very unfortunate judgment, and one is sorry that it took them so long. Then to refer the matter, it remained in this. And even in this judgment, unfortunately, they haven't specifically overruled it, with the result that you have left a loophole unnecessarily. And minority judgment, which says, see, there is going to be some confusion. For example, you can't say that caste cannot be mentioned in election. Depends how you do it. I mean, if you say, all right, vote for me because I'm a Dalit, well, certainly it is objectionable. But if you say, look at it, Hinduism has put caste in such a way, and therefore the only way to improve is to really improve our thing, etc. So there are, in between, inevitably, some kind of thing. But in any case,
you see some kind of problem?
No, but in it gets welcome that majority at least has said that on the ground of religion, it is open. But I wish they had used stronger language and clearly said so.
Indeed.
You ask for a vote of Hindutva, they have not touched. So somebody says Hindutva is my Babri Masjid Gharana is my Hindutva. So these are the kind of things I wish they had clarified.
Indeed.
But in any case, it's a welcome sign.
Sure. Sure. Mr. Vikas Singh, there are several grey areas is what the justice is saying. So, going forward, implementation could really be a problem. How is this particular order going to be implemented?
Well, there are two aspects to this judgment. One is with regard to the fact that there is no overruling of any judgment on this subject which was rendered earlier by a smaller bench. So this 7-judge really has merely reiterated the law as it stands since 1961, because this appeal on the ground of religion or caste was made a corrupt practice by an amendment in the Representation of Peoples Act in 1961. And it has virtually remained a dead letter because of the fact that very few elections are successfully challenged on these grounds during the tenure in which the person holds the seat. So by the time the decision comes, the person has already finished, and many a time Supreme Court has said that the matter has become infructuous. The larger issue that this judgment will have to address is that how it will be implemented will be the conflicting right of free speech vis-a-vis what kind of speech during election will amount to a corrupt practice with regard to asking for it is definitely a very salutary judgment, because in a country which is divided by these caste consideration and religious appeals are being frequently made, I think this judgment is very salutary, because this is reiterating the secular character of the democratic polity we have adopted for our country. And I only hope that in future, whenever a complaint of this kind is made before the or a petition is filed challenging somebody's election on the ground of such kind of corrupt practice, then the fast track court should be set up to ensure that the decision is taken in a quick manner, so that people know that if they do appeal on this ground, they are likely to lose their seat within a short period of time, rather than contesting an election petition and going on technicalities and serving a 5-year term and the election petition not being decided. That's what is happening on ground today. So
Indeed.
this is really speaking a dead letter in that sense, because it has not been able to serve the objective for which it has been brought in. Because it comes, either the election commission should have a power to, at the time of election itself, to declare the election null and void, which is not there so far in the statute book when an appeal of this kind is made. But if that is not done, then really speaking, the election trial should have to be expedited. That is the only way out, according to me, to ensure that this judgment doesn't remain a dead letter.
Indeed, indeed. Mr. Tandon, elections were brought up by Mr. Singh, and let's not forget that very crucial elections are just around the corner. 5 crucial states go to polls early this year. Looking at the elections and looking at it from that point of view, is this judgment or is this order going to have long-lasting ramifications on the upcoming elections?
See, at the outset, with due respect to our learned Judge Justice Sachar, see, the basic issue in this petition was a technical point related to the 1995 judgment, in which the question was his religion, should it be confined only to the candidate or to other supporters? Now, from there, when the case started, Teesta Sittalwar wanted to interject and wanted the court to also review the 1995 judgment, where Hindutva was taken out of the electoral arena and it was defined as a way of life. So, with due respect to him, so here the court refused to go into that part of the judgment, and therefore there is no verdict on the earlier settled issue that Hindutva is a way of life.
Yes.
So therefore we should keep it outside the purview of the present petition. So therefore there is no judgment, there is no comment, and all these 7 judges refused to go into that part of it. Now, having said that, the question is that the issue which started with a technical point has taken a very wider implication, in which most of the judges have commented on religion being out of, it's a secular country, religion should not be mixed with politics. On that, I think there are no two views. All political parties have welcomed it, that they don't believe in mixing religion with politics. But the fact remains that how the candidates are chosen. Most political parties choose the candidate on these very considerations. So they may not make any appeal, a formal appeal during the campaign, but the fact remains some of the political parties' names are the very character
Yes.
is covered by this judgment. What happens to that? So therefore, it's a very tricky situation. I think on the face of it, no political party, howsoever caste-based, communal-based it may be, they will say, well, we don't believe in that politics. We go by the judgment.
Coming back to my question, what implications will it have for the upcoming polls?
I think, as our earlier friend has also said, the implementation is not that simple, because the burden of ensuring that the judgment is implemented in letter and spirit will rest on the Election Commission. And the Election Commission, as it is burdened with so many things. Now, merely campaign and speeches, yes, you can monitor it. But I would say, being a media person myself, I wish on a lighter side, this judgment should also cover the media. Unfortunately, we in the media, when we start covering the campaign, we always say there are so many Brahmins, so many Thakurs, so many Muslims, and that in fact negates the very spirit of this judgment. So
Yes.
therefore, I would in fact like the media also, not only the political parties, but the media also to strictly adhere to this judgment. And in their own campaigning, coverage rather, they should not mention caste, creed, religion, language, etc., which I am afraid the media may not be able to do it. But coming back to your point, starting from the picking up of the candidate, constituency-wise, segment-wise, political parties do take into consideration the caste, creed, sex, language, and other factors. You can't stop that. How can you check a party nominated? In fact, we again in the media say, well, so-and-so political party has fielded 115 Muslims. Well, that very negates the very spirit of this judgment.
Yes,
Similarly, they say
does.
there are so many Thakurs, there are so many Brahmins. So I agree with my previous panelists that implementation by the Election Commission would be very difficult. So what we really need is a self-restraint, if at all we respect. All of us have respected this judgment. There is no denying the fact. But to respect this judgment, number one, political parties, number two, the media should refrain from making mention of all these factors. Only then this judgment can be effectively implemented.
Self-control is the way forward. because-
Self-restraint, I would say.
Yes.
See, there is nothing wrong. In fact, media should be the first to come out
Fair
and
enough.
say, we respect this judgment, we will not make any
I think
mention of
it's-
these things.
Yeah,
I
Justice
think it's
Sachin, yes.
unfair to go after the media like this. You see, it is a fact of life. People are working like this, but we want to stop it in the elections. I mean, somebody says, well, so many things. I mean, it certainly is a thing. If in an assembly, a certain caste gets overwhelming a kind of a proportion. I mean, these are information only. Only thing is, and we can't prevent it by suppressing it. We've got to face it straight away. That,
Yes.
And therefore, if you ask for votes, at least certainly you'll be disqualified. It is a disincentive. I mean, things because they exist doesn't mean that
Fair enough.
necessarily can be utilized as a thing. We know reality of life, which is not very pleasant.
Sure, fair enough.
But then how do we welcome this judgment?
Yeah, so that's what we're going to try and discuss, and that's what we're going to analyze. Let's move on to another aspect of it. Mr. Nigam, one aspect that Mr. Tandon brought about was, some of these political parties themselves. The order is so wide and vast that, take for instance a party like Telugu Desam Party. The name, the language is mentioned in the party's name itself. Does this now mean that the party gets disbanded? For instance, the AIMIM, what happens to that party? What happens to the IML? So, I mean, there are several unanswered questions.
I think I agree with you. But before that, before I come to your question, I don't think there was any need to interpret section 123(3). If one reads this act properly, there is a section called 123(3)(a), which already deals with it. It says any candidate who promotes the feeling of enmity or hatred for furtherance of his elections or prejudicing his rival candidate is to be punishable. His election will be declared null and void. What was the need to interpret 123(3) when there was already a provision existing for this? And secondly, although I respect this decision, however, I am for the minority view because it certainly hits the freedom of expression and speech. Now, what it says, what the judgment says, one has to be very careful about reading it. It says any person who brings up. That's the distinction between the minority judgment and the majority judgment. The majority judgment says any person who brings up religion, caste and creed, which I feel has a very serious consequences. Even media, suppose you are discussing the elections and you discuss the merits and demerits of bringing up religion of a particular candidate is doing it, you are debarred from it. There are grave consequences arising out of it. Therefore, it certainly hits your freedom of expression and speech. But that is what the law is. I hope the larger bench is constituted and looks into it. If an anchor is probably saying that a candidate is using his religion and bringing up certain, historic injustices in the religion or caste or creed or community, that means he cannot do it. How will you know about the credentials of a candidate if such things are not discussed?
Indeed. Mr. Singh, three judges on the bench, in fact, the minority that Mr. Nigam is talking about, said that, in their view, it is for the legislature to really decide and legislate and it's not for the judiciary. So was there any kind of judicial overreach as far as this verdict is concerned?
Well, according to me, there is no judicial overreach, because what they have done is they have merely reiterated what has been already decided by the Parliament in 123(3). It's not a case of the Supreme Court laying down some rules which are not there in the Representation of People's Act. It's a case of the Supreme Court interpreting 123(3) and saying that how that judgment, that section will declare a corrupt practice and what all will constitute the corrupt practice. So if you supposing are directly yourself or through somebody appealing for votes on the grounds of religion or caste, then that is a corrupt practice which is the letter of the law. So really speaking, there is no parliamentary further intervention required, as according to me, as per the three judges bench. Three judges bench has more, if you ask me, gone on the balancing of the interest of the fundamental right to free speech vis-a-vis the 123(3) embargo. Now, if that interpretation is to be accepted, then 123(3) will have to be declared as ultra vires, which even the three judges has not done. So it's a reasonable restriction on the right of free speech when you say that you will not, during the time of an election, you will not seek votes on the ground of religion or caste. And if you go to states like Bihar, where it is a completely caste-ridden politics, I think this, if it is properly implemented, will be really having a great impact on the elections in future. But the problem is really of implementation, because the Election Commission unfortunately has no power to declare an election void while the election is in progress. So what happens? Ultimately, the candidate who loses has to file an election petition on corrupt practice post the election. So the person gets elected using the corrupt practice and then face the election trial, which is where the problem lies.
Indeed. This is a point that you made earlier as well. Yes, Mr.
May
Nigam.
I add? Now, suppose we know there are historical injustices, say by superiority by birth in a caste, or triple talaq, or entry of a woman. If you do not know the views of a candidate on such issues, and he suppose favors such things, how would you be able to, tomorrow he takes a different stand on in a parliament, how would people know? Social mobilization and opinion making on these issues is a very relevant thing, which is what the minority judgment has dealt with. How will you socially mobilize people for the elections or build up an opinion to elect the right kind of a candidate? So, the right kind of a candidate must debate such issues and go to the parliament and then legislate. It is in their domain, because the parliament reflects the will of the people.
Indeed. You know, Justice Sachar, the issue of implementation has been raised by several panelists. One suggestion was the constitution of fast-track courts. Another one, of course, is giving the Election Commission more teeth to deal with a problem like this. Are these viable solutions to implement the order of the Supreme Court?
The solution was all right, it's in the implementation. You see, previously it used to go to a district judge. Now it has gone to a high court tribunal. And it's supposed to finish in 3 to 6 months.
But that's not the reality.
Frankly, it's like this. The High Court has its areas. And now, if one reason today, the Supreme Court says 1/4 of the vacancies are vacant. The government is not accepting it. So if these things come in, how do you expect the thing to do? But you see, I must emphasize this, that somebody says, well, we have a right to free speech, and how do you stop it? Now, that's a famous saying that your right to hit out stops where my nose begins. You can't say that I want to spread the evils of caste and say, no, it's very good. There are some things which are inherently bad. Caste system is inherently bad. You can't say that you can therefore appeal to the people on saying, look, give it to me on caste. I mean, that's not oneness of the country.
Justice Sachar, I would differ. What the judgment is saying, any person who brings up, it is not appeal. The majority judgment says any person who brings up such an issue. That is the distinction I am making. Appealing on this basis, I can understand.
No, I understand.
But anybody who brings up, whether it be media, social media, mainstream media or otherwise, it is something, it gives something to the police to
Yes.
harass the right-minded people. If they are, see, debate and discussion references should be allowed. It should not be prohibited. Appealing, I agree, so far as appeal, but any person who brings up this issue I have my serious reservations on it.
No, certainly. Let's understand. Elections are not a debating society. We are not holding classes for the infants. There are certain evils which have to be accepted. And in India, the caste system has to be
But
established.
Justice Sachin,
as
we need
one-
to educate the
No, no.
people. We need to educate, especially when so many
accept-
people are
Let him make his
illiterate.
point. Let him
No,
make his
I can
point, yeah.
accept him straight away that I can talk of evils of caste. But nobody can say, look, I am so and so caste, so please vote for me.
That is appealing, I agree. But any person
as
who
far
brings
as-
up
as far
I have
as
serious
pointing
reservations.
out evils of caste is concerned, certainly. That's not,
Okay.
you are not appealing for caste.
But that is what this judgment is saying. Any person who brings up,
No, no.
that is
Okay,
something where I have my
yes,
reservations.
fair enough, fair enough. Your point also well taken. Justice Sachar's point also well taken. Mr. Tandon, yes, you want to make a point.
No, first I want to make a point to what my learned friend is saying. See, anybody who brings up, no, suppose if media has brought up this issue of caste, religion or otherwise, what can you do with the media? Because the ultimate in the final analysis, the judgment says that election would be null and void
Yes.
if a person associated with him or a candidate or his supporters. Now, in that case, how can you disqualify the elected candidates merely because one of his supporters in any speech had made a mention of it? So, therefore, I think it strictly will apply only to the candidates in letter and spirit. Having said that, I think by and large this judgment has been given in good faith, in the sense that in a country like India, where elections are dominated by all factors except the development and the good of the society, and therefore there is nothing wrong in saying that the religion, caste, creed, sex, language, etc. should not be the focal point of the election campaign or the election. So I think this judgment is a very honest judgment, but the problem lies with our system.
Yes, from an Indian point of view,
Yeah.
can it be kept out?
See, I think there are so many things which can't be implemented in letter and spirit. But there is nothing wrong in going ahead with that. At least the beginning has been made where all political parties should try to stick to their achievements or their, what we call is their policies, programs.
But that's a very
But
idealistic
you raised a
viewpoint.
very important issue
Yes,
earlier.
yes.
What happens to those political parties who are covered under these restrictions, but by their name itself? Or say, for instance, recently when there were reports of bank account search of the BSP, Mayawati immediately said, you are targeting a Dalit
Yes.
beti.
Yes, so
Now,
she cannot use the word Dalit anymore
so
now.
Dalit you can't use anymore, but at the same time when you release your manifesto, your program and policy, in that you say when we come to power we will do this for the Dalit, we will do for this minority, even that may be restricted.
Yes.
So what exactly will form part of the election manifesto? Nothing but policies in which you can't mention these things. So
Sure,
I
sure.
think it's an honest move, but it requires a lot of education to the people, and also, as I said earlier, self-restraint on the
Fair
part
enough.
of the political
Yes,
party.
you made your point. Yes, Mr.
I
Nigam, very
think
quickly.
Mr. Tandon has supported the minority view just now.
Yes.
He says it is the candidate. Any person, media, is what you do. But that is what the minority judgment is saying. It must be, the word his should be interpreted to restrict it to the candidate only,
Yes.
not to any other person. Majority says any person who brings up. That is the difficulty. It leaves a lot of gray area which will lead to so much of litigation, vested litigation, I would say, which will vitiate the entire atmosphere of the elections.
And burden the already burdened
judiciary.
system.
And who will judge?
Yes. Okay.
think
I'll get final comments from everyone because I've got 4 minutes left on the
okay,
program.
just I
Starting with you, Justice Sachar, final comments from you. Yes, please make
No, I want
your
to-
observation.
You see, restrict is where they said it should be applicable only to the candidate. This is the most restrictive and dangerous precedent. I mean, candidate may not say so, but his real right hand, third hand election agent says so. And how does it? And if somebody else says so, it says with his consent.
What,
Sure.
what about the fictitious
emphasis
voter
is-
comes up and
Necessary with his consent.
Emphasis is with his consent.
with his consent.
So, I mean, it's very simple. It doesn't mean that every ABC will say so of one party and the candidate will be thinking.
Some fictitious voter comes
Okay.
up and says
One
something.
has
No, one at a
show
time,
of
please,
the
because
consent.
I've got 2 minutes left on the program.
Otherwise, it's too dangerous.
Sure, fair enough. Your point taken, Mr. Justice Sachar. Mr. Tandon, your final closing comments on the program.
See, I think, as I said, it's a very honest judgment given in a very good spirit. But the problem lies with our system. As I said, in our manifesto itself, we will say we will do so much for minorities, so much for Dalit, and then your manifesto itself is declared null and void. Then what happens? How do you disqualify an elected candidate? Will be a major issue in this.
Yes, and
whole thing.
it'll be a very grave challenge going
Very
forward.
grave challenge.
Also. Yes.
As
Mr.
earlier
Nigam, your
said
final-
that the petition, you can disqualify an elected candidate only through an election petition.
fair
But what happens during the entire campaign, everybody defies this.
Yes, fair enough. Mr. Nigam, your final
I think
closing
the
comments.
existing position remains in the sense Hinduism has been kept out of it because Hinduism is not a religion, as they have themselves said. I don't know how they will deal with it,
Yes.
which is a very serious issue in my opinion.
So parties like the BJP and bodies like the RSS and Shiv Sena stand to gain a lot from this.
No, there is nobody is to gain. They have also criticized the deficiencies that are there in the system.
Sure, fair enough. Okay. Final closing comments from you, Mr. Vikas Singh, as well, because the order also has said that the state can't interfere with God-related stuff. So this means it's going to open the Uniform Civil Code debate completely.
Well, Uniform Civil Code is a matter which is completely outside this debate because that is being separately considered by the government, and I don't think this judgment has anything to do with that. And as far as any person is concerned, I must inform that this is a person who seeks or appeals on behalf of the candidate, not that somebody in the media is making a statement of fact with regard to religion, and that will be also held against the candidate. No, that's not the judgment. So I think it's a complete wrong interpretation that any person means that any person who appeals on behalf of the candidate seeking votes. So in that sense, his has been amplified and said that any person will include all those people who seek votes on behalf of the candidate. So it's not in that sense so broad as to bring in every person within the fold of 123(3) violation.
Fair enough. All right. On that note, I'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you so much, Ashok Tandon, Vikas Singh, Justice Rajinder Sachar, and Desh Ratan Nigam for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's all the time we have on this edition of The Big Picture. Thank you so much for watching.